One of the most frequent questions that I get from clients is, do I need a will? And they're thinking about it because usually at the time they're also buying life insurance and they're thinking, well, if I get my life insurance at this point, maybe I should make a will at this point. So in today's video, we're going to talk about not only if you need a will, but also 4 ways to make a will. And make sure you stick around to the end because I'll show you a free way to make a will here in Canada. What's up, guys? For those of you who do not know me, my name is Philip Setter. I'm the founder and CEO of Affinity Life, which is an online life insurance platform here in Canada where you can actually view quotes 100% online and apply 100% online as well. So if that sounds interesting to you, I'll put the link in the description and you can check it out. But without further ado, let's get right into the video. Okay, I think as people, we always want to think of like worst case scenario first, like, well, what happens if I just don't have it? What happens if I just don't do any of this? Like, what's the worst that can happen? So I'll tell you, we'll start this video off with what happens if you don't have a will. And this is specific to Canada. I don't know any other countries and what they do there. I know Canada. Okay, so here's the thing. If you die without a will, you die what's known as intestate. And that's a fancy word that they came up with. I don't know. Essentially, what that means is you have no will, you have nothing in place to direct your assets and where your children are going to be taken care of and what happens to the house, what happens to the cottage, what happens to your investments, none of that. Okay. So how it works is each different province in Canada has their own specific guidelines and their own regulations for how your estate is going to be divvied up and allocated to whoever is left behind. And now there's a few really big problems with this because here's the thing, you probably don't want the government choosing where and how your assets are going to get divvied up. You probably want to have a plan in place that says this is where I want everything to go. So leaving it to the government to decide is probably not the best idea. And there's some pretty glaring problems with it. The number one problem is just that it adds so many extra complications and fees to the entire procedure. And your family will just have to go through a lot more stress to try and figure out your estate and what's happening, where it's all going. And it's just an unnecessary thing that they need to do. So that's the number one thing. Now, the number two thing, and this is very big, okay? If you are married and you have a spouse and you have children and just you were to unfortunately pass away and your children are still underage, they're still in the house, then it's mostly fine. In that case, then your surviving spouse is obviously going to be the guardian of the children. However, this is where it gets a little bit more complicated. And again, it varies province to province. If you both unfortunately pass away, now the courts will need to find a suitable guardian. And maybe you had intended it to be, your mother, their grandmother, or maybe you had intended to be a family friend or somebody. However, at the end of the day, you don't get to decide that. The courts get to decide that. So that's one of the, in my opinion, biggest flaws of not having a will and dying intestate is if you and your spouse were unfortunately to pass away, it would be up to the courts to decide who's going to take care of your children. And that's usually not a very good idea. And the last big problem with dying intestate, of course, there's a lot of them, but this is just, the top of the head big problems, is most provinces do not give a lot of rights to common law partners. And this is where it gets a little bit complicated and a little bit tricky because, again, it's a wide spectrum across all of Canada. However, if you're living with a partner and it's just a common law partner, you guys aren't married yet, just common law, and you have intended to leave things behind to that individual. However, the courts and just the regulations in Canada don't give that much preferential treatment to common laws. They don't treat them quite the same as marriage, as a spouse. It's a little bit different. So if you had intended, maybe you guys own a house together, maybe you have, assets together, investments together, maybe you have a life together and you just haven't been married yet and pulled the trigger on official marriage. In that case, they may get what you intend for them, but they may not. So that's a very big problem. And by the way, if you're wondering how it breaks down in each individual province and how it would look if you died intestate, I will drop some links in the description about what it looks like in each province. Just click them and look up your province and see what it is. But just some standards in this video, it's not good across the board. So here's some common examples across the board of when it's a good time to maybe consider getting a will done. And here's the thing, actually, okay? So let me explain this first. I feel like there's 2 different types of people that are looking at a will here in Canada, or that might consider getting a will here in Canada. You have the one group who is still relatively young. This could be anywhere from 20 to 50, 20 to 55, 20 to 60 even, okay? And now this is the individual that's not really thinking about it that much because they're like, well, I'm still young, I'm relatively healthy, nothing bad is going to happen to me. And I will tell you guys, things still happen to young people. Accidents still happen to young people. There's still car accidents. There's still accidents that happen doing sports. There's still health conditions that arise unexpectedly. So there's a lot of things. There's still travel accidents that happen. There's a lot of things that can still happen. So if you fall into any of these categories, which I'm about to go through, you should definitely consider still getting a will, especially because I'm going to show you guys how to get a free one at the end of this video and just get it drafted, have it there. It's just like life insurance. It's a just in case. You want to make sure that this is in place. If you have, and I'm going to go through the list, if you have one of these things, and of course, loved ones and family in your life is one of the biggest reasons to to get your affairs in order, so you're not leaving behind a huge mess for your family to take care of. So that's the first group. The second group is now people that are in retirement, they're closing in retirement, and now they're looking towards estate planning. This is where it's starting to get to the point like, well, we should get it in place because now it's a matter of, when, right? Maybe is it 10 years, maybe is it 20, maybe is it 30. And that's when they start to take it a little bit more seriously because, of course, it's starting to become a little bit more prevalent on their mind. So those are two groups, but they both still need it, okay? So just because if you fall in this younger category doesn't mean you don't need it yet because it's not an imminent thing. It could still happen. So I'm just gonna read off this list, okay? Just if you don't mind here. So a couple things right off the bat. If you're married, that's a big one, okay? Marriage is one of the number one reasons why you need a will because again, when you're single and you're on your own, that's your own thing. You're doing your own thing. But as soon as you bring another partner into the mix and you're married, now all of your assets are coming together, okay? And if you were to pass away, not only would your assets go into the mix of a marriage, but also all your debt would go in there as well. And you want to make sure that you have some guidelines as to how it needs to be taken care of after you die. And that's one of the reasons why you want to get life insurance, is so you're not leaving behind that huge mess for your partner. So that's the first one. Common law is another one. We talked about that. If you just got a divorce and you had assets that maybe you wanted to allocate now to the children instead of the ex-husband or ex-wife, that would be another one. You have assets, home or other properties. This is a big one. If you have a home, whether that's with a partner or not, or if you had vacation properties, or if you had rental properties or some type of real estate like that, and you had a specific place that you wanted it to go, that would be a good idea to get one. Obviously, children and other dependents such as aging parents, that's a big one. If you had aging parents that you were taking care of financially and from a financial point of view, and you were to pass away, you would want to make sure that in your will it states, hey, I want to set this up so they're taken care of because I was the one taking care of them. You have valuable things that you want to pass down. That's another one. If you just had heirlooms or valuable things, you had it for a specific person, that's obviously, you want to put that in the will. You don't want to cause tension, behind surviving family. So again, how it works on a provincial basis here, if you die intestate, is they're essentially going to spread it out between your surviving kin, however that is. It could be a spouse, it could be children, it could be relatives, like siblings, it could be your parents, but it's completely tiered. It's just like, okay, 50% here, 50% there, or 20 to this, 20 to this, 20 to this. And again, it's different province to province. There's no real rhyme or reason for it. So if you don't want to cause tension between surviving family, like maybe you have a bunch of things that you meant for your sister to have or your brother to have, and now the provincial guidelines are saying, well, no, he gets this and she gets that, and it's totally different than what you originally intended. That's another reason right there. You own a business or investments, that's another big reason to get a will done, especially with a business. So if you have multiple shareholders in a business, you have partners in a business, and in your will, it doesn't stipulate who's going to buy the shares if you were to pass away, well then, again, if you die intestate, de facto, it's going to get to the next of kin. It's going to go to the next of kin, and well, who is that going to be? Well, it might be your spouse, it might be your parents, it might be your sister or your brother. And if you started a business with a bunch of other individuals, well, they didn't get into business with your sister, they got into business with you. And so if they have the shares because they get passed down to them, and there's nothing stating that your sister needs to sell them back to the corporation, well, now they're in business with your sister, and that's not a really good situation. And the last reason you might want to consider getting a will is if you have a specific charity that you want to leave something behind to. Obviously, there's a number of different charities here in Canada that are important to a lot of different people. So if you have something like that and you wanted to leave something to a specific charity, getting a will done and having it directed towards them is a good idea. All right, let's talk about 4 ways that you can make a will, starting from the easiest and most simple, going all the way down to the most complicated and most expensive. And again, I'll tell you guys about the one free way that you can make a will here in Canada. Super easy. So the first way that you can make a will here in Canada is you can purchase what's known as a DIY, a do-it-yourself at-home kit. And there's a few websites online and a few probably shady 1877 numbers and infographics that go on the late night television that you can order this from. But essentially, this is just a pre-made little package. It's just, an actual physical document that they mail out to you, and you just fill in the blanks and you write it in by hand. And it's basically a one-size-fits-all template. It's very basic. It costs anywhere from like $40 to $100. You shouldn't pay any more than that. It's very rigid. It's very one-size-fits-all. It's one template. It'll usually include, of course, the beneficiary, the guardian, and the executor if you want to have those included in the will, which of course you do if you had children for the guardian. But this is really a one-size-fits-all answer, and there's better solutions. I would not recommend this one. The second one that you can do, which is, I should have maybe put that as the first one, it's the most simple one that you can do. It's what's known as a holographic will. This is essentially where you get any type of, piece of paper, something like, this notebook right here, and you just write, I would like to leave this behind to this person, signed, your name, dated, and that's a will right in there. I mean, you could write it on a napkin, you could write it on, I don't know, some type of party platter or something. Anything would work. I mean, there's been situations where a napkin has worked as a holographic will. Obviously, this is incredibly basic. You know, you might hear stories about someone on their deathbed just writing it out on a napkin. This isn't the best option, but it is an option. So it's known as a holographic will. You can write it out on something and leave something behind. And by the way, that wasn't the free option that I was going to tell you guys, although that is a free option because, you know, you just write it on a piece of paper. So it costs a piece of paper, pardon me, but that's not the free option. There's a better one, trust me. Number 3, which in my opinion is the best option, is you use some type of online will building tool. So there's quite a few of them. There's something known, I think Canada Wills, Free Will is another one. Legal Wills is the third one. And this is essentially where you're using now technology that can customize the form. So, you know, it's conditional logic. So you answer, yes, I have a spouse. No, we don't have kids. Yes, I have assets. No, I don't have a second vacation home, etc., etc., etc. And this will then produce a variable document specific to you, and you can fill everything in there. You still need to print it at the end of the day. It needs to be printed to become a legal will, but that's fine. I mean, if you get a printer, you could go to Staples or something like that and get it printed. That's not a problem. This is a little bit better. It ranges anywhere from, you know, $0, which I'll tell you guys in a second, all the way up to like $400, depending on your complexities, depending on which person or which provider, pardon me, that you choose to go with. Now, this is really good for simple estates, simple wills. This is what I would recommend for the vast majority of Canadians. You can get it free, and I'm going to tell you guys that in 1 second here, but this is the best option because it's super simple to get done. It's not needed for complex estates. You don't need to go to a lawyer and spend $1,000 to get this done. And here we go. I'll tell you guys how to do it for 100% free. So of course you can go to any of those resources I just told you, but I've done this myself. This is where I have some of my own wills, and this is how I got done in the past when I was a lot younger, is something known as lawdepot.ca. So lawdepot.ca is a website where you can get a whole bunch of different documents. And one of the things that they have is they have a monthly subscription, but they have a 7-week free trial, or 7 day, pardon me, 1 week, 7-day free trial. So you can sign up for this Law Depot account, put your credit card on file. They don't charge it. Get a will done on there. There's variables that you can put on it. It's totally free, and then cancel it before the 7 days is up, and you have yourself a free will, and it's customizable, and it's good enough for basic, simple estates. Most of the Canadians in Canada, they just have children, they have family, they want to make sure that if something were to happen, they would be taken care of, and they wouldn't have a huge mess to leave behind their family. This is a good option. Go get it done. lawdepot.ca. It's totally free. Cancel it after 7 days or before 7 days, and you'll be on your way. And the last one we'll talk about, number 4, is, well, going to see a lawyer. And this is what most Canadians think about when they want to go get a will. And this is probably a bad idea for the vast majority of Canadians. Here's the thing. As soon as you enter into the lawyer's office, the clock starts ticking, hourly rate starts to get charged. And of course, you want to get through that as fast as possible. So here's the thing. Lawyers will have the most amount of knowledge, and obviously they're the best for the most complex estates out there. So this is people maybe with disabled children that want to set up something known as a Henson trust. Maybe this is for people who have a lot of corporations, multiple corporations, or even one corporation, and they have some complex estate planning needs that need to be met, such as passing down the shares, some share redemption strategies, and other things like that. That's where seeing a lawyer would be the best option, because then you can communicate back and forth. These websites might have some FAQ sections, and you might be able to figure out a little bit, but you're not going to be able to ask any questions. And that's really what a lawyer is there for. And this is going to range anywhere from $800 to, well, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, depending on the complexity of your estate. So this is really reserved for people that have complex estate planning needs, and they want to get some advice from a real person who knows exactly what they're talking about. So if that sounds like you, I'd probably get a lawyer. But if you just need something simple, I would pick the first 3 options. And of course, I would go with the third option, just do some type of online legal service, let's just Willful, or maybe such as Law Depot, and just get it done, get it out of the way, get it in place. So if something were to happen, there would not be a huge mess that's left behind. So I hope that answered a lot of your questions, or hopefully all of them, about a will in Canada, if you need one, and how to make one. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them below in a comment, as I answer each and every single comment on my channel. And if you guys are enjoying this content, all I ask is that you give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys in the next one.